And thank you, Pam, and thank you, Immaculate Community. Thank you, Iris, also for being here. When Pam was sharing a little bit about me, people ask me, sometimes when I meet new religious folks or they reach out to me, they ask me, "Are you a pastor?" And I said, "Well, it depends who you ask." I said, if you ask all the migrants that we've helped, and many people, and some other, the Black and Brown community that crew has, they all call me pastors or reverend or something, right? If you ask them. If you ask me, I am the most dysfunctional person God can ever use. The worst sinner of sinners. And I say that because I can never measure up to God. I just try to imitate a little bit of his DNA in my faith tradition, which is Christian. And like I said, no matter where I'm at in my life, I would never measure up to God. Never. But I always say that God owns the trademark. Everybody else is a copycat. So anybody else who's out there showing love, humanity, compassion, justice, that comes from I would say God owns the trademark to that. Just like James Brown used to say, he's the godfather of soul. Everybody else is a copycat. Everybody else is a copycat, I say, of God. Anyways, thank you again for having me here. And I'm here to speak today about immigration and give you some updates on a couple of the programs that we have that we work with, right? Speak to you a little bit about many of you seen the inhumanity of our immigration policies, right? Not just from the past evil deeds of the previous administrations, separation of the children, and other really evil policies from the previous administration. Now, even though this new administration is not evil, and I think the new administration is good, there still have been many shortcomings by them on the issue of asylum seekers. Like when they first took office, this administration, they were putting unaccompanied minors in detention centers in Texas, where former President Trump was putting minors in grounds that are contaminated. That was this administration currently. You saw the horrific inhumanity of the withdrawal of Afghanistan, how that evolved, the inhumanity of all those people suffering and the pain of seeing those people die when they were trying to free. You saw the issue with the Haitians at the border in Mexico and Texas, U.S. and Texas-Mexico border, when the Haitians were being tramped on by horses, right? And then after that situation, some of them were deported back to Haiti after those community members, asylum seekers experiencing an earthquake and then political violence, right? And then you saw the whole situation about the asylum policy prior to the end of Title 42, when the administration started sending back the Venezuelans and the Colombians and the Cubans, mainly Venezuelan and Colombians, so they stopped them in their tracks and did not let them to come seek asylum after they had done that horrific journey, right? And many of you know some of those horrific journeys that migrants take to get here, who are coming to seek refuge and free from violence and persecution and many other things in their home countries, right? I think some of the things you wanted me to touch base was on current immigration reform. All I can tell you about immigration reform in our country here, that is still in limbo, that is still going nowhere. The advocacy is around the registry law. I don't know how many of you know about that law. I don't know too much about it, but I was talking to my friend Polo this morning from Chile, who facilitates the California Immigration Roundtable. The registry law is the one that they're trying to move forward at the congressional level. But that's going to be challenged because that the House is controlled by the Republicans and it's not controlled by the Democrats anymore. So that's going to be a challenge, but that's where immigration reform is at. As far as the push by some of the orgs at the national level is to try to get the registry law changed. So around 7 million people who have no status in the US, including DACA, TPS, and other communities, will be able to benefit from that law, the registry law, if it's able to get changed, right? That's where immigration reform is at. I have another perspective on that. I say why is the immigrant rights movement dormant? I say because how long we've been waiting for immigration reform, and why are we not disrupting the powers that be to get immigration reform. It's been that long. So I tell some of I ask my immigrant rights partners or friends, and I say, why is the immigrant rights movement dormant? Why hasn't that changed, right? So that's on immigration reform. That's the only update I have for you on that issue. As far as the other programs that I'm going to talk about, the other programs I'm going to talk today about is the LA Welcome Collective that we're part of. The LA, and then I'm going to talk about Adelanto advocacy and also post-release for asylum seekers that are now being placed in detention centers. First, the LA Welcome Collective, which was created back about 9-10 months ago, prior to the new year. It was a group that came together, Chirla, Carecen, IMDEF, and then they called us to be part of it, and the Catholic LA Diocese, to be part of to form a collective for that its purpose is going to be that if any bus was sent by the governor of Texas, who was sending buses to Chicago, to New York, but had not sent any buses to LA at that time, that collective was going to be created to be able to provide like a rapid response, humanitarian response, and to make sure that those migrants, when they arrive here, they arrive and they felt welcome, and that their dignity, that we affirm their humanity, and we affirm their dignity. Opposite of what the folks from Texas are doing, right? The indifference to their humanity, their indifference to their suffering, to their pain, already traumatized, right? So that was what the LA Collective was created with. It started having discussions around last year, towards the end of the year, and then it happened, right? One of the buses arrived. I think the first bus that arrived was in June. I'm going to show you some pictures of some of the orgs that are part of this collective. So originally, like I said, the collective was Chirla, IMDEF, the Diocese, us, and Carecen. And it was to provide, based on limited resources, right, to provide initial humanitarian response to migrants that will be arriving in buses, right? And the first bus that arrived from Texas, so if you ever travel on bus or car from here to Texas, it's like a 24-hour journey on a car or on a bus. So you could just imagine how tired those migrants were when they arrived. And when they first arrived, they hadn't fed them at all from Texas. They hadn't given them no food to travel on the bus. What they gave them was the Army ready-to-meal packages. That's what they gave them. The first bus that arrived, right? And the collective had been doing coordination, getting prepared for this, creating a center. In addition to that collective, LA City Office of Immigrant Affairs and the County Office of Immigrant Affairs is also involved in our collective, supporting the collective. They're not part of the collective, but they support the collective. And the collective provides different limited resources, initial limited resources like case management and intakes when they arrive, legal intakes, so they know what their process is going to be now that they're here, in case they're staying here or wherever they're going to their final destination. It provides humanitarian rapid response like food, hygiene packages, healthcare, some healthcare needs. It also case management, intakes, legal support, and then it also provides transportation logistics. 80% of the migrants that are coming on buses, they have a sponsor where they're going to. So the transportation logistics is coordinated whether they're going to be put on a bus or whether they're going to be taken to the airport, right? All those arrangements are made by this collective once the buses arrive and once they have a meal, a nice hot meal. All that logistics is provided. And then about 5% of them do not have actually a sponsor. So in addition to transportation coordination and logistics to get them to their sponsor, and then also some of their families come and pick them up when they arrive. We get the list. Usually, we don't get this by any government agency. One of our partners gets the a notice that the bus is on its way. Usually, we get 1 day notice only in advance. It say that the bus is on its way. It's going to arrive tomorrow. This is the estimated time of arrival. Then they send us the manifest of the migrants who are coming. Children, countries where they're from, and so yeah. And then the ones that don't have sponsors, then they have to be placed in a shelter or someplace. Some of our churches are housing some of them. Some are put in other option shelter. But that's one of the biggest needs there is for this collective, is finding shelter, whether it's transitional shelter, temporary shelter, or whether it's long-term shelter, right? And that's the role that we play. In addition to providing clergy that are present there, when the first bus arrived, we had a couple of religious leaders be there to welcome them and to show that moral support when the first bus arrived. The diocese now also has, after that, the diocese also now provides some of the priests also from the diocese to be there present. But our role, crew, has been really organizing congregations, organizing faith communities that want to open up their spaces to shelter the migrants that don't have a sponsor. And that involves a lot of coordination, a lot of logistics, setting up the congregations, right? We have, right now, we have about 5 or 4 churches that are providing transitional shelter to asylum seekers in different parts of the cities. We also, I'm part of the immigration task force of the United Methodist Church for CAPAC. Pastor Farley is actually here with me also, and he's part of that kind of collective also. And we have a couple of Methodist churches that are offering shelter, because we also receive migrants from the border, from the Imperial Desert area, border, Mexico area. When the migrants are dropped off there by custom border officials or by ICE, asylum seekers. And these are asylum seekers from Venezuela, Haiti, Africa, Afghanistan, Russia, Ukraine, and our church, our good friend, Pastor Bowen, picks them up, provides some temporary humanitarian response, and then they're coordinated sometimes to our other congregations, one in Bowen Park, and others. Right now, we have a church that Pastor Farley used to pastor there for 30 years, the Echo Park United Methodist Church. We have an immigration center that we created there 2 years ago, but we're now getting that church ready, the basement, the fellowship area, we're getting it set up as shelter. And we'll talk later about next steps if you want to be involved with that. And then we're trying to get a Pentecostal church ready in East LA that's offering us some of the rooms that are going to be used for sheltering asylum seekers. So that is the collective, the LA Welcome Collective. More organizations have now, we were able to bring in other orgs now, including Haitian British Alliance, who have been working with the buses, not only here in LA, but in Chicago and New York. And then Cielo is another organization that brings translations services for people's different languages, right? So the collective now has increased its capacity with more orgs being added to the collective. But there's still needs, and there's, like I said, one of the biggest needs is the shelter and that coordination and the food, how to feed the folks that are in shelters or in churches, or sometimes we get vouchers from the city to their place in hotels if there's not enough shelter in the congregations. Yeah, but one more note about the inhumanity of the governor of Texas. So remember, what was it, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, the storm, the Hurricane Idalia that turned into a tropical storm was coming, right? All of a sudden we get a text that another bus was leaving Texas on the day that the storm was hitting Los Angeles. That guy, no regard for the human life of migrants, sending a bus. When I saw that text, because we're all part of a group text where we get alerts when the buses, we get an alert that a bus is leaving Texas on the way. No regard for the human life of migrants. He sends the bus in the middle while we're getting ready for a big storm on Sunday. That's the administration of it, right? And you're all seeing his inhumanity by placing that barrier at the river, right? So between him and the governor of Florida. Those are structures that the immigrant rights movement, religious leaders, everybody should be disrupting and advocating to fight against such inhumanity and such indifference, right? Anyway, so let me show you some pictures. These are some of the, so every time a bus arrives, it arrives at the Union Station. We don't usually make it public. We have a team that receives them at the Union Station, and then they transition to buses from the, LA City helps us with buses from the Department of Transportation. And then they go to a center, one of the churches that is provided by the diocese, usually it's in Chinatown, nearby here. And that's where we set up the logistics center to receive the buses. And that's where all the coordination is done. So it's done, and then all the tables and the different agencies that are there, from the legal intakes to the case management, to health screening, to vaccines, to the Department of Mental Health, to transportation logistics. We all set up. I'll show you. This is, I think, the first time that the bus arrived. These are the folks from Carece. They're one of the orgs. These are the folks from INDEF who provide the legal initial legal intakes and legal let them know what the asylum process is. It's headed by IMDEF, but also now there's also Carece helps a little bit with that, and Esperanza Immigrant Rights Project, but mostly it's headed by IMDEF. And this is my brother Daniel from Haitian Bridge Alliance, and I think Jeff from Haitian Bridge Alliance. They were actually the first ones. So we had also formed a collective in Orange County because they thought they were going to send buses to Orange County. So we had a church there that was on call to respond, like a rapid response. It was headed by Haitian Bridge Alliance, and then Crew was the other main partner there. And Haitian Bridge Alliance was the first one to know that a bus was leaving Texas. And not even the LA Collective did not know, because I'm part of the Orange County Collective also. I will say we would let the LA folks know once Haitian Bridge Alliance let me know that a bus was coming from Texas. That's the first time that we were notified. So that's them. So Haitian Bridge Alliance are part of the collective. Next one. This is some of the volunteers from Orange County. This is Lindsay from IMDEF, myself. This is the setup, which is now the setup is a lot bigger than what it was originally when the first bus arrived. So the Shirla, who does a lot of facilitation of the collective, they hire also case managers. And if we place people in our churches to sleep or shelter, Shirla's responsibility, the case managers, is to follow up with those asylum seekers to make sure that they get provided case management support around healthcare, food, sometimes food, and also where their legal process is at, and also try to find transitional permanent housing for them. Chila does a lot of the coordination with their case managers. Yeah. Do we have any more on this one? Okay. So that's the LA Welcome Collective, right? Just wanted to give you an update. And that's regarding the buses. This campaign is specifically, Crew was from the beginning part of the collective, and we play a big role there. We currently have some of our churches housing some of the bus migrants, and not only the bus migrants that are arriving buses, but Chila is also helping the ones that are arriving and knocking at the doors that they just were processed at the border and they don't have a place to stay. So, okay. So now I'm going to jump to the other campaign program that we do. Which is the Adelanto Detention Center, right? And many of you, if you're not aware of the inhumanity and the horrific things that happen at this detention center, I'll tell you a little bit about it. We've been working in advocacy, doing advocacy. I think Sherry, I think you mentioned one of the first times we went to the Adelanto Detention Center as a group. Crew after the administration, during the Trump administration, there was a rapid response group created also, right? But that group really never got really activated because the large raids never happened. So we decided to create a visitation program because migrants, we wanted to make sure that we're in that space of pain and suffering with the migrants who are in that detention center, because we started hearing about the horrific conditions in Adelanto for the first time. The food had worms, the water was toxic. They just did a study on the water. And then one of the biggest issues was medical negligence, that when somebody got sick in detention, because this was run by a private for-profit company, the only thing that they usually provided at first when they were starting to get real ill was either Tylenol, ibuprofen, Advil, and they will wait till some of these migrants were really in really bad conditions, physically, illness, and then they send them to the hospital, and by sometimes it was too late. And a couple of migrants died because of that, because this private company wanted to save money, right? And I'll tell you one horrific and story was that one time we got called that a migrant on his way to immigration court had fainted. He was on his way to immigration court in Adelanto, and one of my cousin's family members knew them, and they called me because they knew that I do this work. And they found out that he was only like 23 years old. He was living in the U.S. He came as a kid here. His wife had just had a baby, and so he fainted. He had a brain hemorrhage, a brain stroke. He fainted, and they didn't even call his wife. She didn't know where he was at for 3 days. They didn't tell him anything. This is one of the issues with ICE, right? And Gio didn't say nothing. They took him to detention. They took him to the hospital, and then they eventually transferred him to Loma Linda Hospital. He was in a coma. That's when they called us, and so they asked us if we could take some religious leaders to go with him to the hospital and visit him. And I had Father Richard and Reverend Walter go with me and accompany me. I didn't go inside the hospital. They went, and they found him in a coma. He was in a coma. But he was still under the custody of ICE. And you know how they had him in a bed? They had him in a coma, handcuffed to the bed in a coma. I mean, how much inhumanity can you get in a coma? Like he's supposed to get away or something. And then eventually he had another like stroke or brain hemorrhage. And he was still in a coma. He wasn't gonna. It looked like he wasn't gonna recover. And ICE. This is how inhumane these people are. They come to his bedside and they bring a letter for him to sign while he's in a coma, releasing him from detention, releasing him from now they want to release him. And the only reason why they're doing this is because if he dies in their custody, it's a mandatory investigation. And they want him to sign while he's in a coma. That's how these people are. This is a true story. He died. This young man died. His family, of course, was devastated. We called Chila and we said, "Can you partner with us? We want to highlight what ICE did." We blew it up in the media. We had his sister speak there. The Mexican consul got involved and hired a civil rights attorney to sue the Department of Homeland Security. That's just one incident, right? But there's been many incidents in Adelanto. From the hunger strikers that we went to see when that Cherry was talking about, we were able to get all of them out. They were physically assaulted. They were put in showers with in hot showers, and they were pepper spray, and then they were put in hot showers and spray in their private parts against these hunger strikers. Gio did this. We helped initiate a lawsuit. They actually won. Instead of that lawsuit, that was our first lawsuit that we helped initiate with our civil rights attorneys. After that, when the issue of the hunger strikers happened, we helped initiate another lawsuit with Creed regarding medical conditions. And that lawsuit resulted in a famous case, which was the Fryhurst case. And the judge ordered them to release 200 during the COVID time, 400 people from detention. So we saw that lawsuit. And he chastised Gio and he chastised ICE because at that time during the pandemic, this is another issue that happened to migrants at Atlanta. During the pandemic, they were spraying this chemical. And they were having some of the migrants spray it too. So you're in a prison, there's no ventilation. And you're throwing this spray, and the migrants are eating, they're spraying them while they're eating, they're spraying them while they're on the phone, they're choking, they're breathing from their noses. They keep complaining to the GEO officials that they're feeling bad, they're breathing, they're getting on their hands, they're getting blisters. The elderly who have medical conditions, pre-existing medical conditions, have had to go to the emergency room, some of them. And GEO doesn't care. For 6 months, they continue spraying this chemical. 6 months in a place without ventilation, a chemical called HDQ. So with this lawsuit, GEO judge screamed at them and said he couldn't believe he screamed and said, "How can you guys continue doing that when the migrants were screaming at you guys and crying tears because of the chemicals? How can you continue spraying that for 6 months?" And said, now you got to release 400 people. After that, So that was, we were able to help initiate that lawsuit. Crew did the Fryers lawsuit. About 400 folks released. We got a church set up in Victorville to receive them. And then recently, the migrants, we always are guided by the migrants, by those who are affected directly, right? Even though we bring the faith perspective and we look at everything to our faith lenses, we must always be guided by those who are affected directly. We almost must prioritize over their voices, like Jesus did, right? Prioritize the voices of the poor, of the oppressed. Migrants kept telling us that they were suffering from the chemicals. It was over 2 years. We couldn't get at that time any attorneys, civil rights attorneys, tort attorneys to work on to sue GEO, but migrants kept urging us, and at their urging, in March, one of the former attorneys from the other case moved to a new legal justice foundation in Los Angeles, and she was calling me on another issue, and I told her, remember, the migrants keep asking us when, but the 2 years have passed, the statute of limitations. So she goes, well, I'm a new organization now, a new legal justice foundation. We work around prisons and detentions. Let me bring it up to my director. She brought it up to the director. They agreed to interview the migrants, and they filed a lawsuit in March this year on behalf of all the migrants that were affected by the chemicals, horrific damage that was done to them, the ones that were out, some of them were still out. And on July, the judge said that even though the statute of limitation has passed, that the lawsuit, because GEO tried to get it dismissed, saying that the statute of limitation has passed, the judge found out that the lawsuit can go forward. That was in March. Now, that was so there's the advocacy around Adelanto, right? Moving real quick to the Diana Title 42, as you know, that the asylum seeker process keeps changing by administration, right? And it keeps, and so many delays in the asylum that people have been waiting there for years, and people have suffered, people have been killed waiting to be processed to asylum, because that process keeps changing, right, and delayed. And then we have the process of wait in Mexico by the former administration. So after the end of Title 42, they started putting a lot of migrants in detention. So we learned through some of our partners that Adelanto, which was almost empty, at the Desert Annex, the new facility, they started bringing in asylum seekers to Adelanto recently. And then it was brought to our attention that about 125 Mauritanians were put in the Desert Annex. And what was disturbing about this was that they were put, these 125 Mauritanians were put in there without a credible fear interview, and they were all given across the board $5,000 bonds as condition of their release. Each one, all across the board. So our inside partner reached out to us and reached out to ACLU. She said, help us, because she couldn't do advocacy because she has a program in there and she don't want to jeopardize that program, right? So she asked us to do the advocacy. So we form a partnership with ACLU, and then we convene other orders like IMDEF, Haitian Bridge Alliance. When we found out about the Mauritanians who didn't speak, a lot of them did not know how to read or write, because they speak, some speak Arab, some speak French, but some only speak Pular, Mauritanian Pular or Soudanese. And they don't teach that language, I think, in school in Mauritania. And these were migrants that have suffered horrific human rights violations in Mauritania. They were never going to be able to pay that bond. And they were not given the credible fear interview because ICE did not make the effort to provide translation for them and put them in removal proceedings. So they were at risk of losing their asylum case, getting deported back to Mauritania, because ICE did not take the time to find translators. Right, so we started, once we were reached out, we put this coalition together to do advocacy. We put a letter together that ACLU started doing, a legal letter. We had some of the attorneys go to interview some of the Mauritanians. And this letter threatened ICE, and the letter went to the ICE director of Los Angeles that oversees Adelanto. It also, Mayorga was copied with this letter. The five of the orgs signed it: Public Council, us, Haitian Bridge Alliance, ACLU, Immigrant Defenders Law Center. This legal letter talked about their violations of their process and their rights, and that they immediately released them without bond. And the next day, all of a sudden, some of the migrants started calling our partner, and that their bonds started getting reduced from 5,000 to 1,500 the next day after this letter. But of course, they cannot pay that either, right? But after that, we put another group together. We asked African Coalition, who's one of our partners, to join us. They work with Black immigrant rights. And then Baji also reached out to us, and we put a coalition of support. And Baji offered some funds to us to start bonding some of them out. The Black Justice Fund, Haitian Bishop Alliance helped start that fund. They also have to start bonding folks out. We were doing all the coordination. We had all the names and name and numbers to our inside partner that was getting us all their contacts. And we started bonding some of them out, and then some of them were starting to get released to their sponsors. All of a sudden, without bond or with small bonds. And then all of a sudden, we get a call from the ICE supervisor in Atlanta. This is unusual. He says, hi, and he asked for my name, and I said, yes. He said, we're calling you about the Mauritanians. I go, so the campaign had been going on for 2 months, right? To get them out, all of them. And we had got released like about 80 up to that point, up to 125 to their sponsors and everything, because the bonds were reduced or taken away. So he calls and he goes, we are calling you about the Mauritanians. I go, yes, how can I help you? He said, we want to release them. I go, what do you mean? Well, we gave them bonds originally of 5,000, then we lowered the bonds, and they tell us they still can't pay. Of course, we need that. And I go, and he goes, we want to release them. I go, what do you mean? You want to release them without bond? He goes, yes, we want to release them without bond. So, and I go, and so how can I help you? Well, they don't have a sponsor. We need to find, they told us you could help us find a sponsor, a shelter, a church. I said, for how many? For 25 of them. I go, okay. So you mean you're going to release them without bond if we find shelter for them? He goes, yes. And we'll even transport them to your church, whatever. They even offered to transport them. Like, suddenly they went from inhumanity to humanity. I said, okay, let me work on this. I said, yes, we're gonna do it. I told him. So I'll let you know when we're ready. So I call a pastor from Bell, a Lutheran church that has helped me with asylum seekers in the past. I said, Pastor Maria, I just call us. And they were willing to release all these Mauritanians, get them out of that hell. But the condition is we find a shelter. Can you let us use your church? How many? 25. She goes, bring them here. And then we got a contact at somebody, faith community in Bakersfield, who has a support group for migrants. They were willing to take 10 of them for temporary, not for 2 weeks. One of the Unitarian Universalist Church, their members were going to open up their houses. Three folks were going to let them stay in their houses. So we started doing the coordination, and ICE will call us every day, call me every day, and they give me the names, and I tell them, and then when they were going to release them, what time we wanted them released. We didn't want them to transport them. We wanted to pick them up ourselves. We have some pastors, and then we also, when we created the visitation group a long time ago, Crew created that group. That group is now run by Branca. It's called the Avant Visitation Network. She created her own org. She was one of the ones we trained to do the visitation program a long time ago in Atlanta. So she helps do post-release services, transportation mostly. And we help with the coordination of the churches when the asylum seekers get out. Sometimes they need 1 or 2 days to stay because of their plane tickets not ready and things like that. So we started coordinating. So this was the first group that was released to us. Of the 125 that were left in Adelanto, these were the Mauritanians that me and Pastor Torres, he's not the pastor, but I'll show you another picture. They were released from detention. We picked them up. We had a meet with the faith community from Bakersfield. We met at the Mojave City. That's where we're going to meet and transition them there to their cars. So this was the first group of them. They're mostly some of them speak Arab French, but most of them don't speak that. They speak Pular or something. But this when we picked them up. Can you go to the other slide? Then here we took them to breakfast, and you see Pastor Porras, who's a Pentecostal pastor. Yes, Pentecostal pastor in High Desert that helps me a lot with migrants. He's very supportive of our work, justice around migrants. And he helped me, he had an SUV, so we picked him up, me and him on our SUVs. We took them, the first thing we did when they got out of Atlanta is take them to have a nice hot meal because the food there is horrific. It has worms, the water is toxic, everything. And we heard this mostly from every migrant. Yeah, so this is when we took them. This was the first group that we took to Bakersfield. Next slide. And this was the last group. So we had to get the Lutheran church. We had to get it ready. It didn't have no mats, no beds, none of that stuff. We had to do an item drive. Rabbi Susan Goldberg did an item drive for us for personal hygiene items. We had to make sure that there was going to be food there. There was going to be places for them to sleep, clean sheets, all that stuff to try to receive them as much possible with dignity, right? When they arrive. And so, yeah, so this is when this is at the Bell Church. This is the fellowship area on the bottom of the church where we set it up as a shelter. And one day we got this place set up with beds and mats. And that's Pastor Maria. She had housed other migrants for us in the past, including LGBTQ migrants, African migrants from Latin America. She has the other side of the church, which is like used to be rooms for like school, Sunday school stuff. There's a bunch of migrants that are also staying there. But for this program, she able to open up the fellowship. She goes, get them out here. We'll get them out. We got to get them out of that inhumane place and get them out as soon as possible in no conditions. They can stay here as long as we're okay. We're okay. We'll let them stay here. And so then the African Coalition has a translator. There's two of them. There are two of the workers from there. So they're kind of providing us, helping us with kind of a case management and some legal intakes. And then I reached out to my friend Abdullah Ali from the Islamic Temple in Hatton, who's a good friend of mine and is part of our network. And he reached out to an imam in Bell, which has a mosque near the church. And they went to visit them this week, and they're providing some support for them, right? And this is they actually went to their ICE check-in today, some of them. And some of them, thankfully, they were all released with an ankle bracelet. So yeah, do you have other pictures? So that's it. So this happened all in the last 2 months, and we got almost over 100 Mauritanians out of the desert. They had never, something like this had ever hardly been done. ACA was like, we never seen something like this happened. But we did all this coordination. Thankfully, we were in the right place at the right time. You know, God put us in that place to be. And there's only 2 migrants that are left in Adelanto from Mauritania, and we're working on their cases because they actually went to a hearing. So the judge stopped their release because they didn't have a sponsor. So one of our partners is going to assign attorneys for them, and so that way when they go to the next court hearing, they will be able to tell the judge that they do have a sponsor, because some of them had a number to New York, a shelter in New York. But some of you have seen the news that those shelters are over capacity, and they were not answering their calls anymore. So when they told them we have a sponsor in New York, they were not taking their calls anymore. They couldn't take them in anymore. So we stepped in, and thankfully we were able to get them all released out of that place. So that's the program at Adelanto, the campaign that we have is both advocacy to shut those detention places down, and it's also to advocate for the release of migrants that are currently there. And now they're putting more asylum seekers there after the end of Title 42. So we're continue to be in that space for advocacy, but also for post-release to make sure that we are advocating for the release, and also to make sure that we affirm their humanity and their dignity when we're able to get them out of those places. Yeah. So that's the 2 campaigns, programs that we have. So now, as far as the next steps, or should we go to questions or next steps? Because I thought you guys came to see me today, but you guys came to do some actions. Actually, that's not me. So that's what Pam said. She said you guys came to do some actions, next steps, right? So I can open up for questions, but but I can also tell you how ways to get involved, whether it's in the LA Collective, right, or the campaign around Adelanto Detention Center. There's ways for you to get involved, right? Of course, one of the ways is if you haven't become a Crew monthly supporter, please support us. We've been doing our immigration work for the last 3 years without any funding, actually, and we just got funding. Finally, the California Community Foundation found out about our work with the Mauritanians and the LA Collective, and they reached out to us to probably give us a grant and this is after 3 years of having the funding for immigration. So if you're not a Crew monthly supporter, please sign on. But I'll tell you about other ways you can get involved as far as advocacy, and if you want to get involved in the LA Collective, and if you want to get involved in the Adelanto detention work. But I don't know if you have any questions. No, we spoke about that so far they sent, like, I think it's the last bus came in on Labor Day. That was the 12th. They came in on Labor Day, Monday. We were there since 7 in the morning to the bus arrived at 7:15 in the morning that day, and that was I think the 12th bus really that had arrived from Texas. Yeah. But I don't know if you want something specific about it. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I spoke about that at the beginning of the collective. Yeah.
Sorry, when they wear the ankle bracelet, does that come off after they're in their custody or?
No, it all depends on ICE. So ICE determines when they go to their, so after asylum seeker gets released from detention, right? Because it's different if you're being released on parole from the border, right? And you don't have to go through detention. But when you come out from detention, that's one of the conditions, and sometimes ICE puts those bracelets. They're really bad. Some people that have health conditions, it affects them, their blood circulation and other things. So it depends on ICE when they go to their ICE check-in, whether they take them off or they keep them on. Some people have had them for months and months and months. Like Abraham from this is Abraham from the African Coalition, who he just called me earlier a little while ago. He said that he was at the ICE check-in because today they have the ICE check-ins, the ones from LA, and that they took some of the ankle bracelets off. So this was their first check-in, so that's really like a really good news. Yeah.
Also, I was just curious, when the kids were separated from their families, the last administration, has that been going better now for them reuniting?
Well, as far as the reuniting, when the Trump separated the children, so there was a legal lawsuits, a couple of lawsuits, and there was a judge order to the previous administration. I think it continued with this administration to go find those parents and rejoin them with their children. But if you could just imagine, if some of those kids, I don't know how many of you know the process of unaccompanied minors, those kids became forced unaccompanied minors, not like the other kids that came to, that turned themselves in at the border. These were forcefully made unaccompanied minors. So if they went into the foster care system, you can just imagine what it's going to mean to get them out of the foster care system. And if the parent kid is not even here, and then that's a whole another legal process. But I think this administration has put in place something, because I was talking to my friend who's a pastor and is also a social worker, because they deal a lot with the unaccompanied minors. And she said that now any kids that get separated from their parents currently at the border, that the administration has something in place that they have to find them and bring them back and bring them back together. But some parents were reunited. Al Otro Lado worked on that lawsuit. And actually at one time they called, some of our faith community was there. I don't know who from here was there. Bishop, I think Taylor was part of that, when they had found like about 50 parents, and then Custom Border Patrol did not want to process them. And I think Bishop talked to the supervisor and then they forced them and then they processed them. And they were, that was a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Thank you, Guillermo, for everything that you're doing. It's very hard, I know. And it's not a question, but it's like something I think we can all start doing educationally wise. Words are very, very powerful. The media has shown us that. The last administration showed us what words can do. I think it's important for us to start calling people undocumented and asylum seekers and get rid of the word illegal. It's dehumanizing.
Right.
And I think the other thing too, when I've had conversations with people about all of this, some of them, of course, say the same old thing. Well, why don't they get in line? And I think it's time for us to tell them, because there is no damn line. There is no line.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's you share something that sometimes we have our own perceptions or own the way we have been taught about the migrant issue. And of course, our country here has been excluding migrants since the beginning, right? With the first act was the Chinese Exclusion Act against that community. But yeah, using words is very important. That's why it's very important for us to almost be guided by those who are affected directly. And what do they want? Not what I want, but what does solidarity mean to them? Last time we had a training with Pastor Sonny Khan, we had some of the migrants, asylum seekers, share what does solidarity mean to them, not to me. And what does it mean to them, right? Because sometimes people that want to help, sometimes they think that help is offering what they want to, how they want to help, not the help the migrants actually need. And what do they say? What do they need, right? And it was very beautiful to hear them, their perspective, what solidarity means to them, not to us, but to them, right? And they share that, and we're gonna have a future training on that again too, with Pastor Sonny, whose family was also a refugee family from North Korea, and he talked about the some of the trauma that the migrants are already coming with when they're seeking asylum, right? And then once they if they are paroled to the U.S., how that trauma can continue and people don't realize it, and then we help them in a way that continues to increase that trauma, right? Instead of helping, right? So it's very important. I think for me, it's like this lawsuit that we helped initiate was the connection to the civil rights attorneys, but it was the migrants. Tapete, who was an organizer inside Atlanta. Tapete's story is incredible. He was the one that would call us every week at our office, at my cell phone, and he will organize all the migrants inside Atlanta. And he will witness and he will tell everything. He wasn't scared. Like 3 times they tried to deport him. And when the Mexican consul found out what they had done to him, they stopped his final deportation, removal. He got released too, and his story is unbelievable. But he was like an organizer within Adelanto inside. Yeah, and then we had, of course, we were grateful, happy to get the 800 strikers from Central America that were physically assaulted. We got them all. One of them still one of the congregations, but they won that lawsuit, so they settled. But yeah, hearing their perspective, I think is very important. But it's amazing the inhumanity of administrations, the policy, the way you treat another. And we have a history of closing our eyes to people that are seeking refuge, right? Asylum. Many of you know about that history of our country, how we shut the doors on people, that were coming. We close our eyes, we turn our back on them, right? And they were killed when they were sent back to their countries. And I don't really have to go over that, but some of you probably know what I'm talking about, but it's horrific, right? But thankfully there's people like you and us and others who have that humanity and that compassion and that justice DNA to be able to stand with them in solidarity.
Guillermo, I have a question about the visitation program. So some of us were really active in that before COVID, and then it couldn't get in. And I was working with a group called Civic and they changed to Freedom for Immigrants.
Right.
Yeah. So and that was a really, it was informal. It was lay people just being a face and a voice of a kind American. And we heard horrific stories, and we also collected data.
Right. So yeah. So
is that still happening?
So Civic, when Civic was around, they're the ones that trained us when we did our first training on how to visit migrants, right? And part of that was to collect data. But when we went to their database, so I took a couple of people with me on our first. We had a training at a couple of our congregations. Then we physically went to Adelanto. So we said we're going to train a few folks, and then you can train others that sign up, right? And when we found out that Branca really took like an initiative, like she took over the whole thing. She kept telling me, Guillermo, this is your program. What do you want to do with it? I said, you run it. I don't have time. I got to go to something else now. I just plant the seed. I go, that's what I would tell her all the time. Guillermo, but I collected all this data because she went into the database and she found out that all the database that Civic had was outdated and nobody was updating it. So she got really frustrated. She tried to work with them, and then, but then she created her own data system. And she said, this belongs to Cruz Network, because at that time, Civic they didn't have a lot of large network. We actually helped increase their network. And then she said, so I said, Branca, you do whatever you want. I said, I don't have time to do the visitations anymore. I'm doing something else now. And then, so she created, and then she followed up with our folks, and then she would take them to Adelanto, and they do the data collection. Then she started doing post-release, some of it. Some of our Presbyterian leaders help us with that and give us some funding for post-release. So then COVID came, right? So it stopped completely. And then when COVID came, we didn't have houses no more. So we had to find churches to shelter people because people didn't want to take them in their homes. So the visitation program pretty much stopped at that time. Recently now, Branca has re-engaged, and now it's named the Avan. The program is named Avan. She got a fiscal sponsor, which is Carecen is our fiscal sponsor for that. That's where the program is at right now. Pastor Porras is a big part of that now. He's been doing visitations almost every day, and then he's got some. So they're starting to re-coordinate maybe visits again. But because we got involved in this campaign with the Mauritanians, it was like a quick group we had to put together. And she helped some with the transportation logistics when we didn't have any. But yeah, so it's starting to get re-engaged. She's out of the country right now, but as soon as she'll be coming back soon. So she will probably give you an update where she is at with her visitation program. Because a lot of, you know how it is, if you don't stay engaged in something, you kind of become dormant, you kind of lose interest, not because you don't care, but it's just, that's the way, if you train me to do something, but you don't engage me, then I'm gonna, so yeah, but she should be coming back soon, and she will give you an update as far as visitation, where we're at with that. Yeah, Freedom Civic then changed its name to Freedom for Immigrants. We're part of the Shelter Adelanto Coalition, so we're one of the main orgs, crew, Freedom, and the Inland Coalition for Immigration Justice. This fourth lawsuit we helped initiate that. This is the fourth civil rights lawsuit that we helped initiate, and then this campaign, crew was the one that headed this campaign for the moratorium.
Thank you. I'm glad to get that update.
Now, if you have more questions, I'll take them, but I'll tell you some steps how you guys can get involved. I wrote them here so I wouldn't forget, because my memory, unlike the one, it doesn't get better as I age. But my wife says hopefully I get wiser. I don't know about that, but she's waiting for artificial intelligence so she could create a better me, a better husband. Anyways, here's some of the roles that you can help, you can get involved. I told you one of the biggest need for the LA Collective is shelter. It's opening up spaces in your homes and your congregations. So if you're interested in that, let me know. And we're about to hire an organizer, a crew, because we're getting a grant, thankfully. And I want you to say hi to Matt. He's one of our fellow staff, an LA organizer here. And you might have met him. He works on the workers' campaign. But yeah, so shelter is one of them. If you want to volunteer and be available when the buses come, you can let me know. And then you have to come under our organization, because it's a very strict, the coalition made it, the collective made it, because for the protection of the kids and the families. And whoever comes into that space has to be through one of the orgs. But if you want to be there when the bus arrives, provide moral support. Some pastors have been there with me, some clergy, some lay leaders, some committee members. There's an opportunity for you to get involved in Echo Park with Pastor Farley, Pastor Frank. The Echo Park United Methodist Church has an immigration center that was founded 2 years ago. Supporting migrants and empowering migrants, right? Building capacity, right? But it's also going to become a shelter now for asylum seekers, for the collective, and for others. We got to get the church ready, so we're going to use the space at the bottom, which is the basement area. The fellowship area has a kitchen. It's very old, older than me, and it needs painting. It needs kitchen cabinets refinish. Sand down. We're gonna polish the floor. We got some beds donated. They're gonna create some showers. If you're interested in getting the church set up, let us know, because we're gonna have a day for volunteers to come and clean and paint and stuff like that. But also, if you're interested in supporting the asylum seekers once they start going into the church, we could connect you to Ministry of Epic, who's gonna be coordinating that, and with us too, with crew in coordination with us. And we're getting, that church is also serving it as a logistics center. So Pastor Frank let me use the church. So every time we're getting a church ready to receive migrants in shelter, we have to set up the congregation, the space, beds, mats, clean sheets, blankets, personal hygiene items, towels, and things like that. And everything we ask for is granted, because some people give clothes that are torn apart, dirty, smelly. We don't want to treat the migrants like that. We want to receive them with dignity. So we collect items. We have item drives for 3 kind of gift cards: Home Depot, Target, and Rob's Food for Less. To make sure Home Depot, in case we need paint supplies and stuff, and flooring, fixing things, and also refrigeration for the church. All those logistics, right? Food, because like the 12 Mauritanians we had originally. We got a small grant to provide them food and things like that. We had to take them shopping. The same clothes they went in with 3 months ago, that's the same clothes they came with, nothing else. The shoes were all torn and stuff like that. This was their first, when the restaurant, when you see them, that was their first hot meal when they went was to eat there. Yeah. And you tell them, you mention any migrant that comes out of detention, you mention the food, the first reaction is their face like warm. So you can be part of our asylum program that's gonna come to Echo Park and also be part of EPIC. Nefesh, the synagogue that Rabbi Susan Gober is the rabbi who meets in this place here. They're one of our partners in that Echo Park Education Center. So the other things, we're getting a Pentecostal church ready. That's going to give us all their spaces that are empty, our rooms in East LA. We're going to need to set up that church. So, and we're forming an advisory committee. So when we first created EPIC, we formed a board. Somebody from Nefesh is there, different committee members, and I don't know if we still have space for more board members. Pastor Farley's there, I am. But every time we form in some spaces where we're filming an immigration support at a church congregation, a new organization, we put an advisory board together, and that's what we're going to do at East LA College. So I mean at the East LA Church, sorry. We have right now Reverend Heidi Gamble from the Presbytery of the Pacific. We have Father Richard Strada there working with us on that. Holiness Inc. I think is going to work with us on the East LA Church. They have like 8 empty rooms. So we're trying to make that a welcoming center for asylum seekers. So we need folks who want to be in the advisory board, unofficial advisory board, until it becomes official later, and to get the church ready. So,
Sorry, what's the name of the church in East LA?
Santo de Victoria. It's a Pentecostal church. Pastor Carl Rincon has been a big supporter of justice. He's walked with the workers, he's walked with the migrants. So he has offered his church for the possibility to create a welcoming center. Right now, we just voted for the church to house the folks arriving on buses. If it's only temporary, 2 or 3 days, we got to get the church ready. So that's our second church that we're going to get ready after Echo Park. So you could be part of that, but you can also be part of the advisory board. If you're interested, we meet once a month. Who's creating the mission that Welcome Center is going to be. So there's an opportunity for that. The Adelanto campaign, there's two campaigns around that. One is post-release services, shelter and stuff like this, like the Mauritanians. Actually, the Mauritanians that are in Bakersfield, that shelter was only temporary for 2 weeks. So we actually now, the 2 weeks was up this week. So the faith community in Bakersfield is already calling us, because they took them in houses. We work on the transition. So if you are able to provide any transition shelter for the ones in Bakersfield, the ones in the church, they're okay. But the ones in Bakersfield, we're looking to transition them into, we need a shelter for them to transition them from Bakersfield. There's 10 of them there. It was the first group that I showed you a picture that when they got released, those are the ones that went to Bakersfield. There's one of them that speaks a little bit English there, but the rest, we give you a contact to be able to translate. Yeah. A contact, and we're getting support for them from the mosque and things like that. There's a pilgrimage that's going to happen to the detention centers. That's by our sister organization, my dear friend Reverend Debbie Lee. She is inviting me for us to recruit. Let me give you the info on that. I think it's a 3-day bus tour around the toxic and inhumane detention centers. I think starting in Bakersfield. I think it goes to Adelanto, and we were part of that last year. Then it's going to go to I think Calexico area, Imperial area, Calexico, and then it's going to Otay in San Diego. So it's a 3-day trip on the bus, and you're there. They want faith communities to join migrants. Some of them were formerly detained in detention on this pilgrimage. And let me give you the dates for that pilgrimage. Yeah, that's coming up soon. So if you're interested in that, being part of that pilgrimage and being on the bus, that's to the detention, the pilgrimage to the detention centers. They have space for people there. So please check in with me on that. Let me try to see where the dates are. Okay, here's the 2023 pilgrimage to heal our communities. That's what it's called. It starts on October the 26th to October the 29th this year. So if you're interested, please come and see me after that. If you want to be part of that pilgrimage to the healing our communities to the detention centers. I think Debbie and some folks worked on talking about healing communities. And right now, some of our coalition partners have been talking to the Adelanto mayor that his economy doesn't have to be based on oppression and suffering, on jobs, because that's what Gio says, we bring jobs, and at the cost of the inhumanity and suffering of our communities. So they just, I think there was a state law that was passed about additional resources and funding for cities that have detention centers to give them an option to close the detention center and develop the economy away from something that causes pain and suffering. So, and I think that just happened. So that's the tour bus to the detention centers, and you'll be joining migrants and other faith communities to be part of the tour bus. So yeah, shelter, I can tell you this, getting ready those two places. And then I think one of the challenges that the collective is having is feeding the migrants, feeding them when they come and feeding them when they put them in hotels and stuff. Churches might be okay because they have kitchens where they could cook, but of course we still gotta provide food, and we're trying to coordinate where some of our churches who are doing food distributions could go deliver food to the Mauritanians and others, right? But that's another challenge that they have to collective. But those are some ways that you can get involved to stand with migrants and stand with asylum seekers and stand with refugees, right? And support them and accompany them, right? Like today, the African Coalition took some of them to the ICE check-in. Pastor Maria has been taking them to the laundry so they could learn how to wash their clothes, right? And things like that. In her limited way of speaking, she gave one of the church members a stipend to be able to teach them English. So yeah, and like I said, and then you can support our work. Hopefully we're going to be hiring somebody for a grant that we're going to get, but our work has been really a collaborative, and it's been the impact that crew has had on immigration, and not because I do it, but because we do it together, has been really impactful in all the circles around immigration, from the detention center to the collective. And remember, before the collective, we were already housing asylum seekers. We were doing this for we had churches already housing asylum seekers a long time ago, and unaccompanied minors too. We have a program around unaccompanied minors. We partner with Esperanza Immigrant Rights once a year, and we do a big fair, resource fair for the unaccompanied minors with 40 organizations, and crew is the main lead to do the logistics for the whole event for the unaccompanied minors. And we're part of other lawsuits that affects other company minors. We filed a lawsuit against the U.S. government, against Homeland Security, when it came to the unaccompanied minors. This was a while back. They're in settlement talks right now, but it's not public yet. But the lawsuit was because you know what they were doing to the unaccompanied minors? While the unaccompanied minors were in detention, they were getting very depressed. They were suffering from depression. And ICE or Homeland Security, inside detention, these unaccompanied minors was giving them medications, psychotic medications, to try to control them without the permission of a parent or a legal guardian. So Peter Shea and others filed a lawsuit. We were one of the plaintiffs in that lawsuit on behalf of the unaccompanied minors, because they were dealing with drugs. So that we just got an update around that we're in settlement talks with the Department of Justice regarding that lawsuit right now for the unaccompanied minors. So that's one of our other main campaigns that we worked since 2014. One of the lead organizations on the advocacy and support for unaccompanied minors. Yeah.
So along with the lawsuit concerning the trauma of unaccompanied minors, I have a question. So along with the lawsuit right now about the trauma that was caused to the unaccompanied minors, I have a question. I think it's a given that the migrants, the asylum seekers, the refugees have all experienced trauma, period. And I think some of it from the trip between where they're from here to the US, and some of it from how they were received here by ICE. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that's being done right now to assure that their trauma is going to be addressed not just one day, but the rest of the time necessary to heal them from the trauma? Because anybody who has trauma knows that, nobody cuts you a check and says, okay, don't have nightmares anymore, you're good. You have to keep going to get treated. Mm-hmm. So is there anything right now going on to address that?
There's some, but I don't know to what extent, right? Like when the buses come, the Department of Mental Health Service is there, and they offer And then I know some of the orgs like Esperanza that we work with, INDEF works with unaccompanied minors and others. We always had connections to the mental service providers like Amanecer, Department of Mental Health for the county, and other agencies that provide therapy and mental services. So to that extent, some of the orgs are connected to the services because some of that is not only to help relieve their trauma, but it also helps them for their case, asylum case. So, and to that extent, there is in some spaces, right? The other thing about the unaccompanied minors is that some of the unaccompanied minors, when they come and they don't find a sponsor for them, the government puts them in these so-called shelters, and they're there because they don't have a sponsor, and they're there to either they win their asylum case or a juvenile visa case, or they are there if they turn 18 and they haven't won their case. Sometimes ICE tries to send them now to the adult detention center. So we come into that place sometimes advocating not to send them there, send them to one of our churches. But there is to that extent some connection to the Department of Mental Health Services, and some of the agencies have hired case managers. The law firms, some of them have a case manager, and that's the folks that try to do the case management and connect them to those kind of services. Yeah.
Thank you.